Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a high-stakes transition of power. We're looking closely at the source text to answer a fascinating and, frankly, pretty dangerous political and spiritual question. How exactly do you replace a sitting king? I mean, just imagine the tension here. You've got the prophet Samuel, and he is mourning for King Saul. Why? Because the Lord has explicitly rejected Saul from reigning over Israel. But here's the catch. Saul is still on the throne. He still has the armies. He still has all the power. And right in the thick of this grief, the Lord interrupts Samuel with a command that sets a wildly dangerous sequence of events into motion. God essentially says, "How long are you going to mourn for Saul, seeing as I've rejected him? Fill your horn with oil and go." He's sending Samuel to a guy named Jesse in Bethlehem to anoint a brand new king from among his sons. A dangerous covert mission. And honestly, the stakes here could not be any higher. Samuel's immediate reaction isn't just a little hesitation. It is absolute terror. He asks, "How can I go? If Saul hears it, he will kill me." He knows that anointing a rival king is textbook treason. So, to protect Samuel on this mission, God actually gives him a tactical cover story. To keep Saul from immediately executing him for treason, Samuel gets a legitimate secondary reason to travel. The instructions are super clear. Take the horn of oil, yes, but also take a heifer with you. If anyone asks, Samuel is supposed to say, "I am come to sacrifice to the Lord." He's to call Jesse to this sacrifice, and God promises to show him exactly what to do and who to anoint once he gets there. It's literally a divinely sanctioned covert operation. So Samuel follows orders and arrives in Bethlehem. But look, a prophet of Samuel's stature doesn't just roll into a small town unannounced without causing a massive stir. The text tells us the elders of the town actually trembled at his coming. They are terrified. They immediately ask him, "Comest thou peaceably?" They want to know if he's bringing judgment down on them. Samuel quickly de-escalates. He assures them he comes peaceably to sacrifice to the Lord, tells them to sanctify themselves, and specifically invites Jesse and his sons to join in. Looking at the heart. This brings us to the actual selection process, and man, it challenges everything we think we know about leadership. When Jesse and his sons arrive, Samuel takes one look at the firstborn, Eliab. Based on his immediate gut reaction, Samuel says to himself, "Surely the Lord's anointed is before him." He sees this impressive, kingly-looking guy and just assumes the job is done. But right here is a massive thematic anchor for our entire explainer. God immediately corrects Samuel's assumption. He explicitly rejects Eliab based on his stature and his countenance. God says he doesn't see as man sees. We humans are wired to look at the outward appearance, right? The height, the physical presence, the stuff that just looks kingly. But the Lord looks at the heart. It completely redefines the qualifications for this new king. Internal character matters infinitely more than external perception. With the firstborn rejected, Jesse parades the next sons forward. Next in line is Abinadab. He passes before Samuel, but the verdict is exactly the same. Neither hath the Lord chosen this. Then Shammah is made to pass by. And again, the response is, "Neither hath the Lord chosen this." In fact, Jesse makes a total of 7 of his sons pass before Samuel. 7 potential kings, all evaluated, and all passed over. After all 7 have gone by, Samuel has to turn to Jesse and state plainly, "The Lord hath not chosen these." Can you imagine the incredible tension in that room? The prophet is there to anoint a king from Jesse's sons. All the sons present have been rejected, and they are seemingly totally out of options. Anointing the forgotten son. Breaking the awkward silence, Samuel asks Jesse a pretty crucial question. "Are here all thy children?" And Jesse has to admit that, well, no, there is one more. He says, "There remaineth yet the youngest, and, behold, he keepeth the sheep." The future king of Israel wasn't even invited to the sacrifice. He was left out in the fields, just doing the chores. Samuel doesn't miss a beat here. He adamantly demands that this forgotten boy be brought in. He tells Jesse, "Send and fetch him, for we will not set down till he come hither." The entire covert, high-stakes gathering is put on pause. Nobody rests, nobody even sits, until this youngest, completely overlooked shepherd boy is brought in from the flocks. So they sent for him, and when David finally walks in, the text gives us a brief physical description. He's described as ruddy, with a beautiful countenance and goodly to look to, essentially healthy and handsome. But remember what we just established. Outward appearance isn't the deciding factor. It's his heart that God's been waiting for. The second David appears, the Lord commands Samuel, "Arise, anoint him, for this is he." And the narrative moves so quickly from here. The anointing happens in a flash. Samuel takes the horn of oil and anoints David right there in the midst of his brothers. This single action seals his destiny. The immediate and permanent aftermath is that the Spirit of the Lord comes upon David from that day forward. With his highly dangerous mission successfully completed, Samuel rises up and heads to Ramah. The transition of divine favor has officially happened. The tormented king. While the light is dawning on David out in Bethlehem, we've got to look at the drastic and dark change happening simultaneously in the royal palace with King Saul. This brilliantly illustrates the dual spiritual shift taking place. We've got David, freshly anointed, with the Spirit of the Lord coming upon him, but the exact inverse happens to the sitting king. The text explicitly states that the Spirit of the Lord departed from Saul, and, in its absence, an evil spirit from the Lord troubled him. The divine backing has completely flipped. Saul's servants can clearly see this torment. They recognize that an evil spirit from God is troubling their king. To manage his affliction, they propose a very specific practical solution. They suggest to Saul that he command them to seek out a man who is a cunning player on an harp. Basically, the medical treatment of the day for this spiritual affliction is music therapy. They need someone who can play with his hand and heal the king when the evil spirit strikes, so that he'll be well. Saul agrees and tells them to provide him a man who can play well. One of the servants immediately speaks up with a recommendation. He says he's seen a son of Jesse, the Bethlehemite, who fits the bill perfectly. And just look at this list of qualifications. It's basically an ancient resume. The servant describes David as cunning in playing the harp, a mighty valiant man, a man of war, prudent in matters, a comely person, and, most importantly, he notes that the Lord is with him. This servant portrays David not just as an artist, but as a highly capable warrior backed by God. Destinies intertwined. So the crazy part is how these two vastly different worlds immediately collide. Saul, desperate for relief from his torment, unknowingly sends messengers to Jesse in Bethlehem to summon the very boy who has just been secretly anointed by Samuel to replace him on the throne. The summons demands, "Send me David, thy son which is with the sheep." Jesse complies immediately. He equips David with provisions to present to the king, an ass laden with bread, a bottle of wine, and a young goat. David takes these gifts, travels to the palace, and suddenly, the shepherd boy is standing directly before the current, tormented king of Israel. What happens next is a twist of incredibly deep irony. Saul doesn't just accept David's services, the text says he loved him greatly. Saul is so taken with David that he makes him his armor-bearer. Saul even sends word back to Jesse saying, "Let David, I pray thee, stand before me, for he hath found favor in my sight." So the sitting king has just handed the newly anointed future king a front row seat to the inner workings of the royal court. No way he could have known what he was doing. And David fulfills his duty perfectly. Whenever the troubling spirit from God came upon Saul, David would take his harp and play it with his hand. The result was exactly what the servants had hoped for. Saul was refreshed, he became well, and the evil spirit departed from him. The man anointed to take the throne becomes the very instrument of peace for the man currently losing it. As we wrap up this explainer, we're left looking at a masterful narrative of shifting power. We see this striking contrast between external power that is deteriorating from the inside out and internal worth that is quietly being elevated by God. It forces us to ask a difficult question based on the source material we've covered today. In a world that is completely obsessed with outward appearances, titles, and stature, are you cultivating the unseen heart of a shepherd, or are you just polishing the armor of a tormented king? Think about that as you go about your day. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive.